we are continuing our journey through the book of Revelation, and the last time we were together, we were looking at the plagues, and I think we looked especially at the plague entitled Armageddon, the plague that is often referred to as Armageddon, plague number 6, where it talks about the great battle of Armageddon. So this takes us straight over to chapter 17. If I am not confused, yeah, I think we're at chapter 17. We were doing the recordings for the series that Brother Irwin and I are working on, so both things got a little mixed up in my mind. I'm not sure if we are if we are actually at chapter 17 here, but I think that's where we were. Last week we looked at the Battle of Armageddon, and so that was plague number 6. We saw that plague number 7. There are great voices in heaven that say, "It is done." And the great city is split in 3. There's a great earthquake. And so this week, we see that there is a pause in the action. When you come to the 7 last plagues, what happens next? Well, obviously, the 7 last plagues is the end of history, the end of human history. The next thing that happens immediately after plague number 7, if you understand that the plagues and the trumpets are the same event, then right after trumpet number 7, when the 7th trumpet blows, there is a voice in heaven that says, "The mystery of God is finished. The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever." So it's the same thing that happens. You come to the end of the plagues, and the next thing that happens is the coming of Jesus. But if you look at Revelation, you actually have a chapter that comes in here. And let me share my screen and just actually look at the Bible. And we will look at Revelation, where it shows us that there is this sort of another chapter that seems to be out of place, but not really. You come to the end of chapter 16, and it's the end of the plagues. At the end of chapter 16, it says, and in verse 17, "And the 7th angel poured out his vial into the air. And there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, 'It is done.'" That is the end. "There was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great." So this is plague number 7. It's the end of time. Every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And there fell upon men a great hail, every stone about the weight of a talent. So this is we are in Revelation chapter 16. So what do we expect to see next? The next thing we are going to see is the coming of Jesus. But actually, you go to Revelation 17 and it's not the coming of Jesus. You go to Revelation 18 and it's not the coming of Jesus. You go to Revelation 19 and that's where we see Jesus coming. It says in verse 11, "I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. He that sat upon him was called Faithful and True." So the point I'm making is that there are 2 chapters that are inserted. God inserts 2 chapters at this point. Chapters 17 and 18 are inserted. And there's a reason for this. Chapter 16 is talking about God's judgment upon the world and upon those who receive the mark of the beast and those who have rejected God's call of mercy. It's showing you the consequences of the choices they have made, what will happen. But in chapter 17, God stops the action and God says, hold on. We just look at the 7 plagues, which is judgment upon the world. But let me just take the time to show you specifically the judgment of the great prostitute. So you have seen in the 7 plagues, God's judgment upon the world in general. But then now God takes the time and he zeroes in, he turns a microscope upon Babylon in particular, because I think I said this last week, Babylon plays such an important part in what happens on the earth in these last days that she receives special attention. There are three entities actually, and we could say four. There are actually about four entities that are major players. One of them, of course, is the dragon, but he's like in the background. Okay, he's the one behind everything. But in human circles, there are three of them. One of them is a beast. One of them is a false prophet, and of course, there's the woman Babylon. These are the three great entities that are involved in the battle against God, especially in the last days. So we know the beast and the false prophet are political powers. So in the secular world, you have these two political powers who have conspired together to make war against the cause of God and against the people of God. But then you also have a third entity, which is Babylon, Babylon is especially offensive to God because Babylon was an entity that once professed, well, it once belonged to God, you might say. It once professed to be God's, in God's favor, to be God's baby, as it were, to be God's bride, be the bride of Christ. Babylon was once in that place. And so her position is especially offensive because she has turned around and she has assaulted the people of God. She has perverted God's ways and she has helped to corrupt the entire world. So she deserves special mention. And that is what God does here. He gives her special mention. If you look at Isaiah chapter 1, you see where God highlights, you see how God feels about entities like Babylon. Isaiah chapter 1, let me see, verse 21. Look at verse 21. God is speaking about the Jews in the entire chapter. Here's what he says, beginning in verse 1. The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, the kings of Judah. And he goes on to say, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone ahead backwards. And he goes on to talk about the condition. And he even labels them as Sodom and Gomorrah. He says in verse 10, hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. Give ear unto the law of our God, you people of Gomorrah. And he's very scathing in his rebuke right through. But in verse 21, he says, how is a faithful city become an harlot? There you see a clear description of what happens with Babylon. Babylon was never faithful, really, because she's said to be mother of harlots, and she goes back for generations. But the idea is here that religious entities belong to God by definition. And to become an harlot means that you take your favor and give to the kings of the world, they give to the entities of the world. So the fact that Babylon is an harlot, and it says that she has committed fornication with the kings of the earth, it shows you that she's involved in an illicit union. She has become intimate with powers that she should never have become intimate with. So, you know, in this verse here in Isaiah, God shows you his attitude towards Babylon. You can see why God is so upset at Babylon, and she merits special attention. Anyway, you go to verse 1. It says, and there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials. Now, I did ask myself the question on different occasions in the past. Why did God use one of the seven angels who had the seven vials? And once you understand that he's looking at the plagues, but he's focusing on how the plagues will affect Babylon, immediately it's become obvious. Of course, it was one of the angels who had the seven vials, no other angel, because we are looking at the plagues still. But what we are looking at is how they affect Babylon. So, of course, one of those angels comes to John, and it says, and he talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Once you begin to understand the meaning of the symbols, it's like you're reading a children's storybook. Everything is open and it's simple. So God is going to show to John, what is he's going to show? He's going to show the judgment. Okay? Judgment upon who? Upon the great whore, the great false religious system that is sitting upon many waters, that is supported by huge multitudes of people. Everything is very simple. It's an open book. All right. So chapter 17 and 18, God stops, or God pauses the narrative to zero in on this great false religious system to see how she's going to be specially affected by these plagues, how these plagues will be her judgment. And it mentions that she's sitting on waters, or she's supported by many people. Now, this sitting upon many waters, it comes up several times, and the whole point is God is emphasizing how strikingly this great false religious system is supported by the masses of earth. She sits upon many waters. So although you know that the beast and the false prophet are supported by the masses of the world, but the great false religious system is equally supported. She sits upon many waters, and this helps us to understand several places where it mentions that the waters are dried up. We saw last week when we were looking at Armageddon. You saw that the waters of the river Euphrates were dried up, and Euphrates was the great river that was the lifeline of Babylon. So what we can see from the beginning is that the judgment of Babylon, the plague that affects Babylon most of all, is plague number 6. Plague number 6 is the drying up of the great river Euphrates. And what it means is that the support of Babylon comes to an end, and that is what constitutes plague number 6. When the people turn away from Babylon, when her support is completely gone, then the kings of the earth will loot Babylon, will devastate Babylon, will pillage Babylon. So let me mute you, Brother John. Right. So this is the background to what we're about to look at. Now in chapter 17, God goes a little further. He does not just talk about the judgment of Babylon. He starts by giving you information about Babylon and her main lover, which is a beast. So God takes the opportunity to give us some insight into the identity and the nature of the beast. Although he's talking about Babylon, in the same breath he goes into details about the beast. Now, I don't think we're going to look at those details about the beast today, because when we were doing Revelation 13, we covered, I believe, all of those details, or most of them. What we are going to focus on is Babylon specifically, because we want to zero in and see, because this is the target of these chapters. That is what God is saying. So it says in verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So it's very clear that Babylon is not of the same nature as the kings of the earth, or of the earthly kingdoms. When it says the kings of the earth, is it talking about individual kings, or is it talking about kingdoms? I think it means probably both, but the point is that the earthly kingdoms are described as being male. They are described as being male entities. And Babylon is described as being a female entity. This shows you that Babylon and the kings of the earth are not the same kind of thing. This is another reason why we say Babylon is a religious institution. Kings, male and female, they have a relationship of lovers, spouses, or they commit fornication. There are two different kinds of entities, but they come together in some kind of union. I'm saying this because I've seen where people say that Babylon is a literal city, a literal town, a literal city made of, you know, um, buildings and streets and governmental structure. And just looking at it here, you can see that Babylon and the kings of the earth are two different kinds of entities altogether. They come together and they don't belong together. And so God describes the relationship as fornication. Now he says that there is something that happens because of this fornication. Look at what it says. The people of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. What does this mean? Well, people get drunk because they drink strong drink. Now there's a wine, and this wine is produced in a certain way. Everything is giving us a picture, right? The wine is produced in a certain way. What is that way? Well, when the woman comes together and she fornicates with the kings of the earth, if you want to be very graphic, you can think about something literally happening. When she fornicates with the kings of the earth, a wine is produced. That is what it seems to me the Bible is saying. The Bible sometimes is very graphic about things, and it's not as delicate and politically correct like sometimes we are. The Bible is straight. But it says that when she commits fornication with the kings of the earth, a wine is produced. And the people of the earth drink this wine, and when they drink it, they become drunk. In everything, God is conveying a message. And the message that I see here is that God is saying that the people of the earth become disoriented and unbalanced and incapable of managing themselves. Because when a person is drunk, what's the difference between a drunk person and a sober person? A drunk person is incapable of making good judgments. Okay, that's why they say don't drink and drive. That's why when somebody is drunk, you stand at your window and watch him walking down the street, and you're sorry for him, but you're dying with laughter because he travels 5 miles instead of half mile, because he's meandering all over the street. He's falling down, getting up, he's stumbling about. He does not know up from down or left from right. That's the condition of a drunk person. Now, God says that the people of earth have been made drunk. In other words, on this world, people are incapable of knowing right from wrong, good from bad, up from down, left from right. They are incapable. Why? What's the real reason? Why have people become so befuddled in their senses? It's because of the wine that Babylon has been giving to them. In other words, Babylon, the great false religious system, have been feeding them with a brand of religion which is a lie and which only serves to make them lose their ability to behave rationally. I can give examples. Most of us can think of, most of you might have heard some of the theories of people like Oprah Winfrey, who for some strange reason likes to talk about her version of what it means to be saved or to be pleasing to God. Some strange self-generated ideas that come because she wants to maintain her popularity. It has nothing to do with what is true. It's not only in places like the Catholic Church and the denominations, but in the world in general, you have all these different brands, different ideas. It has to do with people like twisting and perverting the Bible to accommodate the LGBT movement. The perversions of Babylon, they have developed because of the reason for it. This is the point the Bible is making. The reason for it is because Babylon has sought to be pleasing to the world. Babylon wants to have the world's favor. This is probably one of the key characteristics of Babylon. It wants to have the favor of the world. And so Babylon bends over backwards, adjust her ideas or adjust what the truth to make it accommodating to the kings of the world. This is what constitutes the wine of Babylon. And so people who partake of this kind of thinking, they are drunk, they don't know how to walk intelligently. We can say in this room that we understand how to navigate our way through the world. Okay, we understand when the world is making demands on us. To some extent, we understand how to respond. Why? Because we have abhorred and rejected the teachings of the Babylonian system. So we have a better idea of what God wants because we are sticking strictly to the word of God. And the time will come when, because of this straight-laced, uncompromising attitude, we will become public enemies. Babylon and those who embrace Babylon will never have that problem because they are drunk with the wine of Babylon. So this is what I understand these verses are saying. In these brief statements, there is a wealth of information. There's a world of ideas that we need to really understand. It says, so he carried me away in verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So we are getting some details about the beast, but it's the woman we want to focus on. Now, notice it says that it is the beast. I want to highlight this. It is the beast that is full of names of blasphemy, not the woman. All right? So, this is one of those passages that is very, very significant in terms of our understanding. And I'm saying this because I know the church that I belong to and that most of us belong to, they teach that the beast, the mark of the beast, belongs to the Roman Catholic institution. They teach also that the woman Babylon represents the Roman Catholic institution. And when they try to explain blasphemy, they explain that the Roman Catholic institution is the entity being spoken about because the Pope claims to be the Lord God, the Pope, and they claim to be able to forgive sins. However, what we have seen, what I think we can see very clearly from the Bible is that the beast and the woman are 2 different entities. We have emphasized this, and I will keep on emphasizing it. The beast is not the woman. The woman is riding the beast, and the name blasphemy is not on the woman. I mean, she is most likely a blasphemer, but God highlights the name of blasphemy as belonging to the beast, not the woman. So we should not confuse that. We don't put the beast's label upon the woman, otherwise we're going to be confused about what the prophecy is saying. So the woman is riding the beast, and the beast bears the name blasphemy. It is far more consistent with the Bible to understand that the beast is a political entity like every other beast in Daniel and Revelation, a political entity. And the woman represents a religious institution that is involved in fornication with the beast. You can understand that if you were to follow that idea, to say that the beast is the papacy, the Roman Catholic institution, and the woman is the Roman Catholic Church. you would have to conclude that the Roman Catholic Church is committing fornication with herself. That's what you'd have to conclude, because you'd have to say both the beast and the woman represents the Catholic institution. So they would be the institution would be committing fornication with itself, which doesn't make sense. So it's very clear to me that there is a misunderstanding, a misrepresentation, a false idea with that interpretation. We are looking at two different and distinct entities that have no right in God's eyes to be mingling together. One is political, the other is religious. So it goes on to describe the woman, and it says, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. Now, as I said, everything is intended to convey an idea. So God says the woman is dressed in purple and scarlet, and I think he is pointing to the fact that the woman is behaving like royalty. She's treated like royalty. Her fornicating ways have made her very popular in the world. She's decked with gold, precious stones, and pearls. God is highlighting the kind of popularity and the fact that she has become very rich in the riches of the world. All the things that are connected to great wealth are associated with this woman. Now, I know a lot of people who have money and they dress in an ordinary way and they go about and they walk like common people. Well, not a lot, I know a few. But most people who have a lot of money, and especially if they begin to rise in the favor of the world, it begins to show on the outside. They begin to deck themselves, especially on their festive occasions. They deck themselves with gold, precious stones, and pearls, and they put on fancy colors. So God is really just saying that this is the condition of this woman: popular, wealthy, and abundantly favored. And it says, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. We looked at that already. It's just reinforced here. The cup in her hand is the cup from which the nations drink. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So this is the name that is on her, not the name blasphemy, but the name is Mystery. The first word is mystery, and usually in the Bible, mystery means a secret, something that is hidden and it's not obvious. And I suppose that it's not difficult to understand how this would apply to this woman Babylon, because in actual fact, for the world, up to this point, Babylon is something good. Babylon is something favored. Babylon is something that represents what is good in the world. I mean, they call representatives from the religious institutions when they're having their great meetings and they want a word that is respected. They will call a religious leader, and primarily they call the Pope, who is the most outstanding religious leader. So the mystery that is there is the hidden reality of what she really is versus what she appears to be. This is a mystery. And so God identifies her properly by putting on her forehead the name Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So why is she called the mother of harlots? I mean, somebody says, all right, I see two hands. I'll get to them in a moment. Somebody says that well, she's called the mother of harlots because we are looking at one institution which has birthed many others. And that's one reason why they would say that this woman represents the Roman Catholic Church. But for me, this is a very superficial approach to the verse. Because all that God is saying, if she's the mother of harlots, it means that she is the source of everything. She's the source of all of that kind of thinking, that compromised way of looking at life, that compromised way of linking what belongs to God with what belongs to the world. Everything has its source in Babylon. I like in the book From Babylon to New Jerusalem by A.T. Jones, he identifies Babylon with the great religious system that began way back there in the days of the Tower of Babel. And, you know, the religion that was founded then at Babel, it has spread all over the world in different forms. And the great principles of that original Babylon still exist in modern day Babylon. And so Babylon is a source of all of this kind of polluted religion that exists everywhere. All right, I see Brother Ken and Brother Ray. Go ahead, Brother Ken.
Yeah, I just a couple things. First of all, there's also the spirit of Jezebel, right, which plays into it as well, right? That's kind of another aspect of Babylon, even though she wasn't necessarily associated with, you know, Babylon back in the ancient times. Her spirit of a woman controlling a king, right, Ahab. Um, Also, I wanted to mention, I don't think it's a coincidence that the Roman Catholic Church, in their own writings, say that the Trinity is a mystery, right? I think this word mystery, when it talks here, could possibly refer to, or the Roman Catholic Church used that term, just like they used Mark in their own writings to say that Sunday is the mark of their authority. So I don't think these things are by coincidence. Anyway, those are just a couple comments.
Okay, thank you, Brother Ken. I'm not sure if Brother Ray had his hand up or it was just from the last time you didn't put down your hand.
No, I have something to add to what you were saying.
Go ahead,
Um,
Brother Ray.
yes. I was watching. I think it was day before yesterday, a presentation on all the people that are going to be working through this government here, with Trump, meaning the ones that he is appointing to, to administrate rules and regulations, religion, especially all of these things here. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we have studied before, and we have all agreed with you that the beast is not, uh, it cannot be the Vatican, because the beast is the power. We agreed with that, and we also agreed that this beast here is going to make an image to that beast that was, whose head was wounded, something like that. I can't phrase it clearly, but anyway, in the cabinet of the government, for the first time in history, it's full of Catholics. I mean, all the appointees, the judges, everything, and for the religion, for the school, everything is uh, strong Catholic leaders. Uh, and which gets me to think that what you were saying, this woman is riding that beast. So I believe that Rome has finally, the devil has been able to put that woman there on the seat, which is the White House, and things are going to are going to change rapidly in rapid succession during these years here. So I was just saying that we need to keep an eye on these things here, because these are prophecies that are being fulfilled right in front of our eyes. For the first time in history, we have powerful, powerful, powerful people in the Catholic system that are connected with the Vatican, especially Marco Rubio, a very uh, well-known, politician that's in Congress as well. So I want to thank you because you brought this up, and I just wanted to share that, just to make a connection, more or less, of what might be, because I do believe that at the end of everything, this beast here at the end is going to destroy the horror and all of the other religious systems that comes with her, Trinitarians or not.
Okay, and thank you, Brother Ray. I know that I see your hand, Sister Esther. I know that the people who believe that America is going to set up a religious a religious dictatorship, and that the primary element of this religious dictatorship will be a Sunday law. I don't think there are too many people here who hold to that anymore, but they are very excited because of what Donald Trump is doing and what you just said about many Catholics being a part of his administration. I suppose that would add to that excitement. Sometimes I ask myself the question, what would you do if there's a Sunday law? What would you do? Because I I I I thought about the issue of the mark of the beast, and I thought about these things very carefully before I started teaching them. And I have my present position because of carefully studying the principles in the book of Revelation. So I could only say that if something like that happens, I still would feel that if I go with the Bible, I still have to hold to my position. But I'm saying this because I know that it's possible that things may go in a certain direction. And usually, if you don't have a foundation biblically in where you stand, you jump from one place to another. I don't want to be in that kind of situation. It's very much my policy that I don't want to be guilty of misleading people either. But when you come to the Bible and you look at the Bible, you can only look at what is before you and try to hold to something that harmonizes with the Bible. To step outside of the Bible and jump onto something because it looks like it's going that way, in my opinion, it's wrong. And I saw where, for example, in the recent situation, a lot of that happened among Christians. People began to believe that what was going on in the world over the past 3 4 years, you know what I mean? People began to teach and to believe the idea that this was the mark, and what they were doing was reacting to the news. They were reacting to YouTube. They were not reacting to the Bible because the biblical principles are very clear. And so, yeah, I know that the woman is riding the beast, and we can see it, as you said, in the appointments that are being made to positions of high authority in the government. But what is important is that we hold to the principles that we can see in the Word of God. And if we are correct about the principles, the activities will follow those principles. We can understand that there are some things we can say, well, that's interesting, but I'm not looking that way because I'm trying to go with what I see in the Bible. Sister
If,
Esther, you can go ahead.
before sister, just one more thing. I want you to understand why I brought this up. I don't bring this up because I believe that there is a Sunday law. I bring this up because I believe there's going to be a system established that's going to be abominable. I don't believe it can be a day of worship, nothing. It's something that they are gathering together, that it's going to be law and it's going to be abominable, and we are not going to be able to buy and sell unless we subscribe to these things. And what it is, we don't know yet, but it's there. It's there with the Catholics.
Sure. Okay, Brother Ray. Yes, Sister Esther.
Uh, um, Someone mentioned about this going back to Babylon, and to me, I've been thinking lately about the fact that it goes back to the building of the Tower of Babel, where they wanted to form a one world government in that place. And God wanted them to be scattered over the earth. So he scattered them and he confused their languages. Today, they're forming a one world government, and God is not stopping them. and their languages are no longer confused because they have the internet interpretation. No matter, they can, the powers that be, they can all speak to each other in a language that can be understood. So they're um, they're forming that one world government, and God is not stopping them.
Sure. Sister Esther, a very, very important thing to consider. I that is probably one of the most striking things that is happening right now. The reason why God broke up their plans at the Tower of Babel was because God says nothing they put their hands to will be withheld from them. God restrained them at Babel because, as much as people think they were primitive people, they appeared to have been highly sophisticated and well developed, as we know. And so God confounded their language. Today, you pick up something here from Elon Musk. You pick up something here from scientists in Germany. You pick up something here from scientists in Israel, Australia. The world is increasing at this rapid fire rate because all information is at everybody's fingertips. All information is there. So you can build on the information that somebody on the other side of the world has discovered. And so the rate at which humanity's abilities are developing are incredibly rapid. And if it was a problem in the days of the Babel builders, it is a problem today. In the days of the Babel builders, God simply, for the first time in the history of the planet, he confounded their languages. It was something they didn't know. They weren't accustomed to different languages. It probably never occurred to them that there could be different kinds of languages. So when it happened, they had no way of responding to it. They just went about their different ways. But today, they are so sophisticated that is nothing to them. And so, yes, that is one of the most certain signs that we have come to the end of time, because surely what was wrong then is equal, what was bad then is equally bad now. And so instead of confounding the languages, God will stop it by his final intervention, which is the coming of Jesus. Sister Talia, go ahead.
Blessed Sabbath, Brother David and family. So, with regards to what my sister mentioned with the confounding, going back to the Tower of Babel and confounding the language, wasn't and I'm just asking, wasn't the original intent of God that there would be a one world government his? And I'm curious about the fact that,
You said, I'm curious about the fact, and then
uh,
you cut out. Could you repeat that?
oh no, I didn't say it. I was curious. What I said was that I wholeheartedly agree to the last part of what I was saying, that the Bible is the sole authority in terms of how ultimately. So I agree with that. But I was just stating that if you didn't hear the first part of what I was saying, that I asked, well, God's original intent to have a one world government, which would have been his, except the fact that the pagans at that point in time were, well, whomever they were, his people and the likes, um, were seeking another God and another kind of government. Hence, the example with Saul asking for a worldly king. And I was just curious about that. And I think that's what you
Okay,
heard.
sure. Let me explain my understanding of it, Sister Talia. The only time that God, the only time that a one world government could have succeeded in this planet was in the days of Adam and Eve. Before sin. Before sin, God made man the ruler of a one world government, himself and Eve and the animals and the whole creation. Now,
Agree.
once man sinned, there was no longer As a matter of fact, God didn't even institute a system of kingdoms until after the flood. I don't know what happened, what existed before the flood, but there's no record of any kingdoms and different, apart from the fact that Cain built a city and it says little things like this. But it's after the flood that you really had the development of kingdoms. Now, God did institute a kingdom with Israel as his people, and he became the head of this kingdom. In a way, it was supposed to be what is called a theocracy. But at the same time, what we learn from the history of that kingdom is that not even if God is ruler, not even that can produce the proper kind of kingdom. With that system of government, the system of government was the government where control was from the outside. So I think we're looking at two different principles. God never wanted there to be any other government but his. But in a world of sin and where people are free, it's impossible that there should have been anything but that kind of system where you have different kinds of government. But even in that context, God never wanted a one world government because it would give sin too much of a breeding ground. It would give sin too much of a breeding ground for it to spread and multiply. As a matter of fact, even in Israel, which was supposed to be a theocracy, don't we see that the same exact thing happened? One person, one king of Israel gave birth to the next king who was more wicked. You can think of Omri, Ahab, Manasseh, that line, and they became more and more wicked. Association made them more and more wicked. So the same thing was happening. Same thing would have happened when all those kingdoms came together. So it's a little bit different from what we are looking at, but the principle was that God eventually made us understand that the only kind of government that can work is the government where he lives inside, which is a new covenant. The kingdom of God with Christ living inside is a government that is to take over the entire world. But for it to work, all the other kingdoms will eventually have to be destroyed. So it's a little bit more than, the ideas we're looking at here in Revelation. But basically, yes, it can't work. A one world system of government will never work, will never be really developed in this system, in this sinful system. Anyway, I don't know. I saw your hand still up, Sister Esther, but I'm not sure if it was there from the first time.
I actually had 2 points and I forgot one of them, but I have a question regarding the image to the beast. When the United States is going to make an image to the beast, I'm not sure that we can deduce that it's going to be an image to the beast as we have experienced it. I'm thinking that it's probably going to be very much like the beast was much earlier, during the time of the Crusades and some of these other horrific things that happened. What do you think about that?
I agree with you because the beast as it appears today is not as is pretty mild compared to what it was in the past. So when it says an image of the beast, it doesn't mean necessarily an image of the beast in its present condition. Even though I believe it's going to go back to a lot of that older kind of behavior. But I agree, it will be more a mirror of what we saw of the beast in the past. I agree with you. All right, so let's see if we can make some more progress with this woman. And it says in verse 6. In verse 6, back to Revelation 17. I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. What what John is highlighting here is the reality that, okay, it says the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. in most cases, when you go back to the kingdoms of past ages, in most cases, the people who have been killed for God's sake, it has most of the time been because of the influence of false religious systems. It has been because they have stood for God and they have stood against the abuse of the worship of God. And you can think of all of them. It is said that Isaiah was put in a hollow log and they cut the log in two with Isaiah inside of it. Who did it? It was the Jews who did it. The Jews did it because he was speaking in the name of God. He was speaking on behalf of God. And that is why Jesus could say, all the prophets from the blood of Abel unto the blood of Zachariah, the son of Barachias, whom they killed between the porch and the altar. Jesus was saying that all of the righteous blood on the world, Jerusalem was guilty of it. Now, that's a very telling statement. And I want to look at the statement just a little bit. Let's look at it's Matthew chapter 23. I want to just pay a little bit of attention to it for a moment. Matthew 23, because I wanted to look at, these are Jesus's words, right? You know, they are full of deep meaning, but he says, who is he speaking to? He mentions Jerusalem. But then he specifically singles out the scribes and Pharisees. Who want you scribes and Pharisees? You hypocrites. Verse 29. And he goes on to say, verse 33, you serpents, you generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? He goes on to say, wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men, and scribes, and some of them you shall kill and crucify, and some of them you shall scourge, beat in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city. Who is he addressing? He's addressing the scribes and Pharisees. A little later on, you see that he zeroes in on Jerusalem because he's talking about the religion, the religious entities that control Jerusalem. It's not the city Jerusalem, it's not the building, it's not the walls, it's not the streets. He says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee. Why would Jerusalem do this? Why would the scribes and Pharisees do this? It's in the name of religion. In the name of religion. And that is why Jesus says in verse 35, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, the son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Now he goes back to mention even Abel. You go to the Bible and you read the story of Cain and Abel. And why did Cain kill Abel? Do you realize that it was a religious issue? Because both of them came to worship God. And one came to worship God bringing a lamb. The other one brought the fruits of his ground. There were two different methods of worship, and one represented the method approved by God. The other one represented the method that Cain thought was appropriate. And because God favored Abel, God accepted Abel's religion, but he did not accept Cain's religion. Cain killed Abel. And so in principle, it was Babylon that killed Abel. In principle, it was Babylon. Babylon never existed, but the same spirit of Babylon. And what we are looking at in the Bible, God is looking at the spirit behind something. If you have the spirit of Babylon, you are Babylon. If you have the spirit of Satan, Jesus identifies you as Satan, because this is why he said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. Because in principle, Peter had the spirit of Satan. He had the attitude of Satan. He was speaking the language of Satan. He was Satan in principle. And that's what we see many times in many of these prophecies. So Babylon is guilty of the blood of all who were killed on the earth, because the Bible is speaking in generalities. But what it is saying is that the vast majority of those Christians, God's people who were ever killed, they were killed for the faith that they held. Yes, sometimes, somebody might have shot a Christian in order to rob the person. That might have happened. Sometimes, like John the Baptist, but even John the Baptist, okay, they cut off John the Baptist's head because he told Herod, it's not good for you to have your brother's wife. So Herod killed him, and because his wife induced him to kill him. But at the same time, why did he disagree with John? Because John's religious principles clashed with his principles. It was in the name of religion that John was killed. So the point I'm making is that God is showing us that in the book of Revelation, he's actually looking at spiritual principles. So the woman is drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And we can skip over. Let me just go to chapter 18 in the right panel, and I'll show you where it says about this woman Babylon, in verse 24, Revelation 18. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints. All right, naturally, but it goes on to say, and of all that were slain upon the earth. This again is another striking statement that makes us know Babylon cannot be referring to a particular location. Like I'm thinking, of those who say that Babylon is a literal city. Like they would say the city is the Vatican, or the city is France or London or New York. I mean, when you look at the specifications here, it's clear that that is very erroneous. Babylon is an entity that that her nature includes all the debts that have taken place upon the earth can be attributed to Babylon. So God is showing us that Babylon is not just one simple little entity that we might define in a legalistic way. It's the principles behind Babylon. So when Jesus said of Jerusalem, the blood of all that was slain upon the earth will come upon you, he's saying the same thing to Babylon, which means that Babylon and Jerusalem are a part of the same entity. Babylon and Jerusalem are a part of the same entity. I think of the argument that Adventists have. They say the Adventist church cannot be Babylon because Ellen White said the church will never be Babylon. And they hold on to a legalistic statement, and they hold to that. It can never be Babylon. It can be an apostasy, but it can never be Babylon. And God is not viewing things from that perspective. That's the mistake that a legalistic mindset makes. You approach the thing to say, well, then it has to be a specific entity. It is this denomination, and if it is this denomination, then it cannot be that denomination. But if we are looking at the principle of Babylon, something that has the spirit of compromise, of fornication, that is feeding the world with false doctrines, how can you say it is not a part of Babylon? In the name of compromise, falsehood, and the persecution of those who stand for the truth, absolutely, it is a part of Babylon. Absolutely. So, this is what God is showing us when it says that Babylon is guilty of the blood of all the martyrs of Jesus.
Brother David,
So, yes, brother. Is that Brother Claremont?
Brother Frenchy.
Okay, Brother Frenchy, go ahead.
So are we expecting if these characteristics, because if you mention the falsehood and compromise, are we to expect persecution coming out from these churches, especially the Adventist church, in the near future, since it is part of that Babylonish system?
Brother Frenchy, you said the near future, I would say the near past, because the thing is, these churches, these institutions do not personally persecute for the most part. What they do is they call upon the arm of the state. They call upon the arm of the state to carry out their persecution. Um, I hate to keep on referring to the recent situation, but everybody can empathize with it. These institutions, many of them were calling upon the government to take action against their people who would not cooperate with what the government was imposing upon everybody. I even think the institution you mentioned, it was encouraging all its people to cooperate. And the thing is, there have been many instances of even the Adventist Church calling the police to deal with people who were in disagreement with them. They have taken people to court over the issue of using the name Seventh-day Adventist. I mean, I don't have any burden for that name, but I still can see very clearly where on several occasions they have destroyed and ruined people for using the name and for other little issues like that. They have had no compunction in using the power of the state to compel people to bend to their will. So the principle is there. And if it comes to the place where it calls for putting people in jail and even killing people, I know the position they will take. Okay, they will back away and simply say, in this matter, the church has no authority. We encourage our people to cooperate with the state. That's all. But by abandoning those who have a different mindset, they, as it were, throw them to the wolves. The principle is the same. The time will come when, we saw it in World War II. In World War II in Germany, when there were some of their members who refused to go to war, they refused to take up arms because of the way they understood the Bible. To preserve her status, the Adventist Church allowed her people, her young men, to go to war. Adventists to fight against Adventists in other countries, Christians to destroy Christians from other nations, and they allowed it. And as a matter of fact, they basically said to the state, those who don't cooperate, they are not in harmony with us. We don't agree with them. You can do what you want. There was a lot of persecution against those who didn't cooperate, and the Adventist Church, as it were, threw them to the wolves. So I don't have any real question in my mind as to where they will go when the crisis intensifies.
So they always remain pure in the eyes of the public or the members, because they always say that they always fool people with the idea that they are the children of God. This is the church of God, and it's like a net trying to keep people in this net always, so that they don't escape with these lies and so on, that they are the children of God. So they always remain pure in their eyes, that they are not the ones doing the persecution, but the state is, and they are, their hands is out of it. If you understand what I'm saying.
They have done something very interesting and very appropriate, in my opinion, when they have claimed the label of Laodicea. And that I think is so appropriate, and it answers the question you just asked, because Jesus says to Laodicea, you say, I am rich and increased with goods and in need of nothing. That fits perfectly what you just said, where they and their members believe that everything is all right and they are on the beautiful pathway to the holy city. But Jesus says, but I know you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, naked, and I will spew you out of my mouth. For them to adopt this label and to take it onto themselves is one of the amazing things, because in that message to Laodicea, there is no hope. There's no hope. There's only Jesus' condemnation and the statement that I will spew you out of my mouth. It describes very well the true condition of that institution, in my opinion. All right, so I absolutely realize that we are not going to make much progress any further today. Let me just go down to the last part of this chapter and try to finish this chapter. Next week we'll look at chapter 18. So in this the middle part of the chapter, as I said, God takes the time to give us some details about the beast, but we are focused on the woman. So it says in verse 15, it goes back to the woman, and he said unto me, the waters which you saw, where the whore is sitting, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So God tells us, God is reinforcing here the idea that this woman, whatever we understand her to be, is supported by the myriads of the world, millions. She has a great support. But it says in verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Now I'll come back to that verse, but it says, for God has put in their hearts to fulfill his will. What is God's will? God's will is that the woman should be judged. So when God says, let me show you the judgment of the whore, he's showing you what the 10 horns will do to the woman. So the devastation of the 10 horns is the plague that comes upon the woman. You go to Revelation 18 and you see how she's burned and all the kings stand afar off, throwing dust in the air and so forth. What we are looking at is the destruction that is wrought upon Babylon by the 10 horns. So these 10 horns will hate the whore. And I would ask this question, not for you to answer, but for you to consider. What is it that makes the whore so completely abhorrent to the 10 horns? I mean, the woman has been riding the beast for millennia, thousands of years. And now at the end of time, finally, her paramours, her lovers, turn upon her and destroy her. Why? There is a reason that I have in my mind that I would suggest to you. And I think it is because at the end of time, the beast becomes an entity like it has never been before. At the end of time, for the first time, the beast reappears in public. And what is he? He is a beast from the bottomless pit. There is something about the nature of the beast at the end of time that has never been there before in all the ages that the beast has existed. And that difference is that the beast comes from the bottomless pit. And what I understand this to mean is that the beast becomes a totally godless entity. I think atheistic. I didn't say that the beast is atheism. I believe it is going to be an entity that is completely focused on godlessness. I believe the God of this beast will be science. They will have nothing to do with God. You see the world pushing hard in that direction. The mark of the beast will be something that has to do with something secular, something that somebody who is into atheism could embrace easily, but a Christian cannot. And because of this, they will regard Christianity as the great enemy. They regard religion as a great obstacle in the way of their ambitions, in the way of the mark. And that is why they will turn around and destroy even their old-time girlfriend, the beast, not the beast, Babylon. They'll turn around and destroy Babylon because finally at the end, they want a world that is totally secular. They don't want the limitations of religion upon them. And so they destroy Babylon as they also try to destroy the people of God. These 10 horns, the Bible says,
Quick
God
question.
said,
Quick
will
question.
you
Is
say
this
that again?
under the? Sorry, brother David. Is this under the seventh head or under the 10 horns? This what you mentioned.
The 10 horns, the seventh head will fall, and then the 10 horns will become the dominating powers within the beast. The beast, when he becomes king number 8, there are 7 heads, but there are 8 kings. 7 heads, and these 7 heads are 7 kings, and one is to come. And when that one comes, he remains a short space. Then he falls, and when he falls, there arises king number 8. King number 8, I would label as the headless beast, because it's after the 7th head has fallen. There's no 8th head. Instead of a head, you have the 10 horns. So that is the time when the 10 horns receive power. After the seventh head falls, you have a beast with 10 horns, and that's the time when the beast is said to be emerging from the bottomless pit. And that is the time, it's during that period, sometime during that period, that the 10 horns will destroy the prostitute. All right, so I think I'm going to stop here for this evening. Next week, we'll look at chapter 18,